All right, welcome to part 4. Hopefully you made it through parts 1, 2, and 3, and it was fairly painless. If you didn't, you could click on the link in the description and you can download this folder. So the starting point for part 4 is TJ5. If when you open TJ5, if instead of seeing this guy, if like everything's all hot pink, it's because the textures are missing. To find the textures, click File, External Data, Find Missing Files, and then navigate to wherever you downloaded the folder, and then go to TJ Textures, and on the top right, click Find Missing Files. Now I want to get rid of these relationship lines, or these dotted lines that show you what's parented to what. Press N to open up this little sidebar, and under Display, uncheck Relationship Lines. That'll hide those little lines. Now we want to go to the animation screen layout. So up here on the top left, we're on default. We want to go to Animation. Now this is just another 3D viewport. I'm going to press 1 to go to front view, and for the viewport shading, I'm going to choose material. Now those relationship lines are back. Okay, so one more time, press N, display, uncheck relationship lines. Now we're going to make him talk, so we need an audio file. Before we import the audio, let's make this timeline a little bit bigger. And then we're going to split this timeline into 2 windows. So if you can see right here in the corner, there's like these diagonal lines. So hover over that until you get like a little X. And then you can split this into 2. Let's make the top one a video sequence editor. So on the bottom left corner here, click on that and change it to be video sequence editor. Now press Shift Space, and that's going to make the video sequence editor window full screen. So Shift Space, and then in the folder, there's a file called TJ Audio MP3. Let's drag and drop that in. And drag that over so that starts on the first frame. Let's zoom it in. Zoom it in so it kind of takes up the whole window. Now, when we go back, it'll be zoomed in. So the other thing is we want to check Draw Waveform. So press N to open the sidebar and click Draw Waveform. Now you can see the waveform. So now we can see the waveform along with the timeline, and we have our mouth rig and our character's face all on the same screen. So this isn't really a complex mouth rig. It doesn't have, like an AEIOU, like a phenome chart type thing. It only has these 4 shapes. So pretty much all we can do is look at the waveform, and like in this area when you see there's no sound, his mouth's going to be shut. And then you can see, these little wobbly lines. We're just going to guess which open mouth to put next to it. It's not going to be realistic. It's going to be cartoony. It's going to be hilarious looking, in my opinion. So the first thing we want to do is just start with a closed mouth. So I'm going to move the green square, the selector, up to the top right corner, and his mouth will be shut. Press I to create a keyframe and choose location. And now I'm going to just drag over to where you see the talking starts and drag it down. So now his mouth opens when the talking starts. Let's see. So there's a little break in between there. Let's just do this one. And then it's going to open a little bit. So you're just going to kind of guess. So now when you look at this, you see the square is moving between the images, and you can see it kind of scrolling around because it's tweening. Blender is adding frames in between the keyframes, which is usually beneficial, but in this case we don't want that. So to fix that, we need to go to our graph editor. In this case, we're going to select the selector, which is the green thing, and just make sure all of its little nodes or doodads or whatever they're called, just make sure these are all selected. Click on Key, Interpolation Mode, and change that to Constant. So Key, Interpolation Mode, Constant. So if you look at these, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see they're just like straight lines now. So now as you drag, it's just going to like switch it straight to the next thing. And then I think as we keep going, it will just stay constant. So now we got to go through and line up these 4 shapes along with this waveform. Let's turn on a keying set. So in the timeline, you'll see this little red record button. Automatic keyframe insertion for objects and bones. So with this green square selected, click this record button and then select location. So what that's going to do is each time you move the object, it's going to automatically create keyframes. So now we don't have to press I every time, but the keying set is just kind of different keyframes and stuff. So the one we want is location. Now I'm just going to go through and kind of line these up. I will speed this up later so that you don't have to watch me do it. It's kind of tedious, but that's pretty much what animation is all about. So here we go. All right, that wasn't so bad. Okay, so next I'm going to turn off this record button. Make sure you're only recording when you're actually animating, because otherwise when you move stuff around, it'll insert keyframes. Anyway, so turning that off. Now we can watch it. So we have our frame rate is 24 frames per second. So the first time that it plays through, it's not gonna, it's never really gonna line up, but especially the first time that you play through it, it's not gonna line up because it has to buffer. So I'm gonna press, Option A, and play through this, and oh wait, first we need to make sure that it ends at 480 frames. Okay, so in the timeline, we just needed to make sure to include, the entire animation. Okay, so anyway, the first time that it plays through, it's gonna not even be close, but hopefully after it plays through once, it will buffer, and then it should be pretty close. So let's check it out. Hello, and thanks for watching. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make this simple 2D animated face. It has a mouth that can be animated and eyes that can be animated. So there are 4 parts to it, and so watch all 4. Okay, actually, it did line up. If you look up here in the top left, it'll tell you the frame rate, like right up here in the top left while you're playing. So as long as that's over 24 frames per second, then we're good. Oh, you know what else we could do is let's animate the eyes a little bit. So let's bring this eye rig down here. And let's just make him blink every once in a while. So again, I'm gonna turn on the automatic keyframe insertion, and let's just go through and let's start out with it. Oops. Okay. Turn that off. Move this up out of the way. Whoa, whoa. All right. Getting crazy. Okay. So move that out of the way. Let's turn on the automatic keyframe insertion. And just want to move this a little bit. Alt-G is going to give you your default eyes. So then just drag this over to where he's blinking. You know, if you wanted to get technical, you could give him a different eye for whatever syllable he was saying. I like to use Alt-G. Oops. Alt-G is going to make it bounce back so that at least... Okay, so his eyes are spinning all over the place again. All right, so what we got to do is select the eye selector again and hit key interpolation mode constant. So now when he blinks, it'll just be like a switch. So now that we've got his mouth talking and his eyes blink once in a while, I'm just going to move his head like just up and down a little bit as he talks. And for this one, we don't want the constant, we want the tweening. So let's see, I'm going to hit record again, select the head, and just going to move it like just a tiny bit for the first one, and then I wonder if I can just hit I. Okay, so now I'm just gonna grab his head and move it just down just a tiny little bit, and then move it back up, just so like when he's talking it kind of looks like maybe his jaw is moving, or I don't know. I mean, I would assume people's heads move around when they're talking. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Just to give him like a tiny little bit of movement. Cool. So now his head moves around while he talks. And one more thing, I'm just going to make his hat kind of bounce when his head moves up and down. When his head goes down, I'm just going to move the hat down a tiny little bit. And then when the head pops up, I'm just going to move the hat up teeny little bit. just so it looks like his hat is just kind of a little bit bouncing around on his head. Awesome, guys, we did it. We made the equivalent of a professionally created animation. So let's take a look at what we did. First, I want to show a couple of little tweaks. So in the sidebar on the VSC with the audio, you can check caching, and that's going to make it playback easier. It's going to put the well, let's just let the window pop up. It's going to put the audio file, the sound file is going to be decoded and loaded into RAM, which is going to make it play back better. The other thing is on the bottom down here for sync mode. So this is in the timeline in the bottom. We're going to switch it to say AV sync, which is going to sync the audio and the video. All right, so I'm going to scroll over here to the left to frame 0. Click on my 3D view port and hit shift space. And let's zoom it in. And let's take a look and see what it's going to look like. Hello, and thanks for watching. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make this simple 2D animated face. It has a mouth that can be animated and eyes that can be animated. So there are 4 parts to it, and so watch all 4. All right, that was pretty good. That's going to do it for part 4. I didn't show how to render it out into a final video. If anybody is interested, I guess I could make like a part 4.1 that would show that. But essentially all you do is you render this into several PNG files, and then it'll render like each frame, and then you pull the frames back into the VSC sequencer and just realign them with this audio, and then bounce it one more time into a video file. So again, if anybody wants me to make if anybody wants to see a little short video, I guess I could make a 4.1. All right. Thank you for watching.